waiting for the bite shot. Okay.
We're waiting. Okay, good. There we go. Go live. Go live. Fingers crossed this works, you guys. I don't know who gave an artist all this technology, but oh, it looks like it's running an advertisement. So we'll see how it goes. Looks like we're up. Looks like we're rocking and rolling. Oh my gosh, we've got folks here. We've got Russ. What's happening, Russ? Alessandra is here. Good morning, you all. I'm so pumped to have you here. We're going to give it a minute or two just to let all of our good friends from all over the world start showing up. But let me make sure that I've got this going here. We can see our faces.
Okay.
Let's do a little gallery view because I've got a special friend here today, which we are also excited for. Oh, Monique is coming to us from the South of Spain. Deborah, what's up, Deborah? How are those little grandkids of yours? I hope they're doing well. Hope everybody's happy and healthy. Buck, I'm here. You're here. Kristen's here.
Good morning, everyone. Afternoon, evening.
Coming in from France. Well, good morning. It looks like we've already got a good number of folks on the line. So we're going to go ahead and kick this off because otherwise I'll just spend an hour saying good morning to everybody. So obviously I have got a friend here with me today, somebody who I am so excited to have share her expertise and knowledge. I immensely appreciate her work and not only just the beauty of the work that she creates, but the heart with which she uses to do that. And so this is Bella from Fulfilled. And I first came across Bella from Instagram, I think just from, you know, the way you meet people on Instagram, but I just wanted to bring you all in today to get to know Bella. So good morning, Bella.
Good morning.
So, and Bella, you are coming to us from San Francisco, California, correct?
I live a couple hours outside of San Francisco, but close enough.
Close enough. The closest major city. So for those of you who don't know Bella, I want to do an introduction just to kind of explain a little bit more of who she is. Now, I am positive there are plenty of you on here who already know Bella and know her work and are super excited to have her here today. But for those of you who don't know her, she is a professional photographer, a recipe developer, world traveler, very committed to whole foods and quality real food and kind of healing through food. And additionally, though she is, oh, did we lose something? Did we lose it? Oh, it looks like we've got everybody. But in addition to living here in the States right now, she has a very special place in her heart for the country of Greece. And so, Bella, I was hoping you could just tell us a little bit about why Greece is important to you and how it's significant in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually am not Greek. I have a Greek last name because I married a Greek, but I am very American. So marrying into a very Greek family was basically my life was like a reinterpretation of my big fat Greek wedding. But over the years, I've gotten extremely close to my husband's parents. Eventually, I learned the language, I learned how to read and write. And when I first met my husband, he told me, obviously it was like the day we met, but he told me I'm going to live in Greece one day. And he just like knew, even though he was born and raised here, he just could like feel it in his soul that he was meant to be back in his homeland. And so fast forward all these years later, in 2015, the war refugee crisis started, where a lot of refugees, mainly from Syria, but from the Middle East, were basically migrating towards Europe through Greece at the hope of a new life. And so Greece has had, I don't know, it's been rough. They haven't been able to really care for these people in a way that at this point would be considered humane. And for my husband to kind of watch behind the scenes, and even now, 4 years later, we don't necessarily hear about it in the news, but the refugee camp specifically on the Eastern islands, like the islands of Lesbos and Samos, are considered to have the worst refugee camps in the world, which is pretty disheartening for like a westernized, modern, quote unquote, continent of Europe, because it's not just Greece's responsibility, it's the whole of Europe. And so we've gotten to a point in our life where we wanted to be able to make a difference. And that specific cause has been kind of at the forefront of our heart. And And that's how we want to make a difference. So we're working really hard behind the scenes to hopefully change policy, because unfortunately it is an extraordinarily political problem. So, you know, providing a blanket or a meal for a refugee is amazing, but it's a Band-Aid for today. We want to affect change that literally turns the situation around for real, and get refugees in humane living conditions where the mental health crisis on the ground in Greece in the refugee camps is deplorable. The suicide attempts are through the roof. There's little kids attempting suicide. It's harrowing. So our goal is to hopefully just turn things around so that they can have some hope for their future. So yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, just to see you so intimately involved in the Greek culture. And so for those of you who don't follow Bella, you definitely need to go follow her, especially on Instagram. I just love following her. Currently she's in the States. But as far as like the Greek adventures and when you return to Greece at some point, you know, being able to really understand and see a culture through different eyes, and getting to see a part of the world that some of us would never otherwise get to experience. And certainly I love seeing then how that plays out and how that, I'm sure, influences then your photography and the colors you use and the work that you do. So for those of you who aren't following, definitely go find the link below. And two, you can also find ways through Bella to help support this mission of supporting the refugees and making real change. And so that is all, there's a whole bunch of information and exactly like templates for being able to email folks in government and leadership roles. And that's all on your website as well, correct?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. And then two, just before we jump in, I know everybody's super excited to talk about color, but I want to just get a little housekeeping out of the way as well. Just to let you know too, that Bella has some amazing in-person workshops, right? Like we talk about how great the internet is and we can learn through tutorials, and I see all the ways that you're growing, but to really have like that in-person experience, especially from such an incredible teacher as Bella. And two, that the workshops that you're doing are then helping to support this mission as well. So when are the workshops that you are offering?
So the upcoming workshops are being held in San Francisco, and they're very small, intimate style. I'm calling them masterclass workshops because I've never before had the opportunity to have a workshop with such a small group of people. So there's going to be 5 workshops total this spring, the end of April through May. And they're like a 4-day workshop. And the format basically allows for me to have a lot of one-on-one time with each student, just because it's a smaller group. It's basically the beginning of a mentorship. So because there's only 7 people at each workshop, it's going to allow me a lot of ability to really tap into each student's individuality. Because what I've learned, and the reason I don't have an online course at this point, is everyone learns so differently, and each person comes to a workshop for a different reason. There's people who come who own a business and they want to learn how to take pictures themselves. There's people who've been a portrait or landscape photographer and they want to explore a new medium. And then of course, there's people who want to be a food stylist or food photographer, or already are, and are trying to expand their abilities and learn in a one-on-one kind of intimate personal setting. So the cool thing about these workshops as well is that they include mentorship after the fact. So each student gets one-on-one virtual mentoring with me, so that as they kind of continue on their journey, if they need help with editing, we can go one-on-one and I can walk them through something they've been challenging, or if they need help with a contract or with developing a proposal for a client. So that's the first time I've been able to offer this as well for every student who attends, which is going to be really exciting to see how having that one-on-one mentorship relationship in the months following after the workshop to really help people come into the fullness of everything they learned while we were together.
That is phenomenal. So for anybody who has been looking for a mentorship experience, Bella has just a wealth of experience and knowledge. And two, I feel like you've been blessed with a teacher's heart, Bella. You know, when I watch, you teach online in different ways. I just can only imagine that the in-person experience would be phenomenal. So for those of you who want to check out the details of that, I've got it all linked in the description box. So definitely go check that out. And then too, as an added benefit, the funds from this are helping to support the mission in Greece, correct?
Yes. So 100% of my proceeds. So obviously there's cost and expense involved with hosting these, but 100% of everything we earn beyond what it costs for us to run these, we're going to use for the refugee work that we want to accomplish in Greece and hopefully beyond. I mean, we hope to turn things around in Greece, but also be able to help people in general in that region. And people, I mean, I think, you know, in our lives, my husband, he would always say things like, I wish I was a millionaire so that I could just help people, you know, so that people wouldn't have to starve, or, you know, like he just has always had this huge heart. And I was in agreement with him. And so a couple of years ago, we paid off our house and found ourselves in a position where we worked really hard to become debt free. And the freedom that came with that, it was just like, we kind of looked at each other and we're like, what now? It's like, let's change the world. Let's change the world. And it's super exciting. We feel extraordinarily honored to be in this position, to where we can do something. I think the neatest thing about it is because like Fulfilled, the name of our entity, you know, this thing, which we actually just got all of the nonprofit status for, which is amazing. But then the word fulfilled is basically about coming to completion, like being complete as a person. And I feel like very early on in this thing that we started with the food photography and the blog, like I realized early on that our journey to fulfillment and our journey to completion isn't going to happen. Like it's like symbiotic. Like when you help others on their journey and when you're invested and you're a part of lifting other people up and supporting them, that's where you actually find your own personal fulfillment is actually in what you do for others. And so being able to host these workshops and help people pursue their passion, find their purpose, but make a difference in their life so that hopefully they can go on and make a difference in someone else's. It's just this beautiful thing that I feel extraordinarily honored and privileged to be a part of, other people's lives and other people's success.
I love it. I love it. No, it's a beautiful mission and it's heartfelt and it's honest. And so I'm excited for those of you who are going to opt in and jump into her workshops. It's going to be pretty epic experience and clearly life-changing on a lot of levels. So, so let's go ahead and transition now because we have been talking all month about the topic of color. And, you know, for those of you who watched the videos this month, you can remember this book right here, which might have driven you a little bit crazy. For those of you who this book was like, what is this guy talking about? Feel free to leave some comments. I see the chat is very active right now, so feel free to share your feedback about that book. But at the same time, it's one of those that's really worth digging into and internalizing. And I know there are plenty of chapters in this book that, I mean, I read it, you know, however many years ago I was in college, and it was like 20 years ago now, but you know, I read it then and reading it again now and thinking like, wait a minute, do I really understand this? Because the topic of color, you can really never exhaust the experiences with it. You can never go too deep with it. So hopefully you did some good wrestling and you'll continue to do that. But Bella, for those of you who aren't familiar with her work, I'm gonna go ahead and jump over here just to a quick screen share so you can see what I'm talking about. Here, let me get myself organized over here. All right. Oh, here we go. All right. So let's go ahead and, oh, it's not doing it. Technical difficulties. There we go. All right, here's Bella's work right here. So as you can see, in terms of color, I mean, you know, when I think of different photographers, I mean, obviously we all use color to some degree in terms of food photography, but just Bella's personal use of color to me has always been very striking and interesting and dynamic, and something that I specifically notice in her work. And so I wanted Bella just to share with us a little bit about her process, and just as far as colors and how she comes across colors and how they speak to her. So Bella, if you could just kind of telling us a little bit about, like, do you have particular colors that you gravitate toward, that you feel kind of naturally inspire you?
Absolutely. I think if I had to be asked what my favorite color is, I mean, I think green was always a favorite color of mine. I think if you look at my feed, I've kind of found my thing with green, which I think I discovered it just after getting a new backdrop that was like this gray plaster kind of look from this backdrop company called Erickson Surfaces. And I loved it, and I wanted to see what it looked like. And I think I put matcha on it, which if you follow me, you know, I'm a big fan of matcha. And I think thinking about what green means to me is, I think when we see green, at least I know when I do, you feel vibrant. It feels like life-giving. Like you look at a cup of matcha and it just feels like it's going to be good for you. You know, you feel healthy looking at it, right? And I think it's a color that occurs a lot in nature. And for whatever reason, I've been very drawn to it. But the specific combination of green on gray has kind of been something that I feel like is a bit of a signature for my particular style. And it's something I gravitate toward all of the time, which just in this shot, you can see it quite a bit. So I would definitely say that green is a huge inspiration for me. But early on in my Instagram journey, I was pretty focused on the flow and feel of my gallery. And so if I've had a lot of green going on, you know, I want it to be balanced. I don't want that to be the only thing. And if you go through my gallery, you see I pretty much make use of every color in the rainbow. And for me, it's just how I see. And, you know, if I'm looking at my feed, I'm like, okay, well, maybe I need some yellow or some orange or some red. And the actual flow and appearance of how those tiles look on Instagram actually drives a lot of the way that I create. If I'm looking at my gallery and I'm like, I need blue. I need something with blue or cooler tones. It may be the backdrop I choose, or, you know, like a Greek door from our time in Greece. So I basically I feel like the art gallery curator, and I'm really trying to create a full experience for people who discover my work. And I really consider my Instagram gallery to be my portfolio. And so I just kind of let it speak to me. But for the example of like seeing pink, you know, if I introduce something with pink, well, I have to have something else with pink within a reasonable amount of time so that it feels balanced. Yeah. So that's kind of why I feel like, even though I do everything, I don't stick to a particular color scheme. Yeah. I don't stick to particular backdrops. I kind of literally do everything. And the way it all works is because I'm thinking, I have that consciousness that, okay, if I have pink down here, at a certain point, it has to be reintroduced, whether it's through a flower or a food, so that it just, you have this kind of that common thread of everything's different, but at the same time, it flows in a way that it doesn't feel out of place.
Yeah. And are you then, from a content creation standpoint, then lining those up ahead of posting, like in like a Planoly or some other sort of software?
Yeah, absolutely. Early on, I would think when I joined Instagram, they didn't even have those things. I joined in like 2015. And they didn't have those types of things. But once they came out, yeah, you used to like literally like post to Instagram like really quick and then like delete it to see how it looked. Yeah. And then I remember one of my friends being like, hey, they came out with this new like planner. You should check it out. And so I like Preview app, and I just use the free version. I don't like to like actually schedule my posts through there, but I use it as a way to kind of play with the tiles, play with the images, and see what feels right and see what looks good next. And there'll be times that I'm looking at my feed and I feel like I know what I need, but I don't have it. And so I think about creating something, and I go in the kitchen and So a lot of my creative direction is actually driven by what my Instagram feed needs. And I don't know a lot of other people who work that way. But for me, I get a deep satisfaction in, like I said a minute ago, curating this experience. I think that treating your Instagram account and your gallery as an opportunity for someone to get a snapshot of who you are as an artist and a photographer, it's extremely powerful. And in 12 to 15 squares, depending on the time, the physical size of their smartphone, that's your opportunity to make a first impression.
Absolutely.
And I personally want them to be like, wow,
yeah.
Who is this? I want them to be drawn in. I want them to keep going. And I think that's another reason why I like doing a little bit of everything, because it keeps me interested as an artist. I never get bored. And I think that it's another huge strategy in that, and incorporating different backdrops, different colors, doing everything I wanted potential clients or brands or businesses to see my work and be like, okay, she can do anything.
Yeah.
So
but at the same time, having that continuity, that it's all still your work and that it all works together as a cohesive group. Thinking about it like fashion, right? That you see a fashion collection and it all makes sense together, but all of the individual pieces are unique and speak to, a particular color, a particular feeling, a particular subject. So
exactly.
It's so interesting to hear your process, because that definitely, for anybody who thinks an Instagram feed just sort of happens, like clearly there's a lot of intentionality behind
absolutely.
Yeah.
I on a given week, I can spend hours toying around and moving things around. And there's times when I'm not a content creator that has like weeks in advance. Typically, like I create a lot more like in the moment. I may have like a week and a half tops.
Okay.
And I don't know, I feel like by planning and playing around, it allows me to, really like the experience that you see, there's hours of work that go into that, so, but for me, like I said a moment ago, I get such deep pleasure. Like there will be times I look at the plan on the preview app and I'm like, I show my hubby and I'm like, just doesn't that look so good? Like, and the excitement that I have with, and that's why I say, I feel like the curator of an art gallery, and I'm just like, oh, and I'll show him some things like, that's the perfect picture to post next on Instagram. It looks so good. And, and I think that especially like years down the road, this is going on it'll be my 4-year like blog and Instagram anniversary this May. And I think that, sometimes, especially with the flood of content that we see on a daily basis and so many people pursuing this passion and wanting to get somewhere with it, I think that finding ways to keep it passionate for yourself and creating, it was interesting. I was talking to someone, I think last week, and, I think that sometimes you can get really caught up in like creating based on what you think your followers and what other people want to see. And, I'm all about seasonality and relevance. Like right now, I probably wouldn't post something with pumpkins. It's spring. Sure. And I think it's just symbiotic for everyone to be thinking about springtime and flowers and sunshine and the new produce that's going to be coming in to season. But all of that is to say that I think it's really important, especially as you get more experience and you've been doing this for a long time, to create from that place of passion and inspiration. What excites you? What do you want to create? And I think that that's how you'll stay really true to your individuality and how your career will stand the test of time, because you're putting your creativity before all of those other things. And I think that's really, really, really important, because it's easy to get kind of caught into a loop of seeing what's popular or seeing what, comparing yourself to someone else's success or what are they doing. And it's like, you always want to come back to that place of like, who are you? Why did you come here in the first place? So keeping it, and I think that's like any relationship, is finding those ways to keep it exciting and authentic for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing your process with us. That's, I'm sure, very helpful for a lot of those out there. So as far as that preview app, once we wrap up here, I'll be sure to link that down below. So anybody who wants to find that can start using it and start methodically planning their Instagram feed.
Yes.
And two, as we jump into April's content, which those of you who are familiar with the Bite Shop Book Club and all the details of that, April is all about business aspects of food photography, and certainly portfolio is a big piece of that, and how we incorporate Instagram in today's economy as our own personal portfolio. So more to come on that. But what we want to get to now is we have a bunch of images to share. I put out a call to my email list last week, as well as on social media, asking for submissions of photos that you all have created, inspired by different things you've learned about color or colors you were inspired by recently. We got so many great submissions. So selected a handful of those. And then Bella also selected a couple that she had recently come across. And she's like, Joni, these stopped me in my tracks. So I was like, Bella, we have to share these. So let's go ahead and hop into very first, the ones that Bella, these are folks who you're just familiar with through Instagram, or how did you come across these lovely folks?
Yeah, just follow them on Instagram, and literally, like you said, just I was floored when I saw these images, because I think I've never seen anything like it, and just I don't really want to use the word bravery, but the boldness and that they had to take this step and to post something on a color that I've never really seen used in food photography, and to see how well it worked. I was blown away. So that's why I chose them for this.
Well, and two, just as a context for this conversation, something else that's linked down below that Bella sent my way about the psychology of color. And so as we're going through and we're talking about these different colors, you can pull up the link below. It's, I forget exactly the website, but it's linked down below. You can check it out, and it walks through all different colors and kind of, I mean, personally, we have our own personal approaches to colors. Like Bella was talking about green and how green makes her feel, but there are some certain universal psychological principles in play about what different colors can evoke in us. Were there any, because you sent that website to me, Bella, are there any on that list that you were like, just made you smile or made you go, oh yeah, that's totally what that color does for me?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, I think when you look at the color psychology, you have to think like some of the emotions that are coming up, you know, and the feelings that they're saying, like red does this and, you know, yellow does that. You know, I think that all of that is very contextual. So for the example, yes, here we go. So, and this is actually, I think it's like a poster for like a teacher that they can like put up in their classroom. But, you know, when it gets into, you know, let's see one where it's, here we go. Okay. So you know, like, I don't know, you guys have probably heard at a certain point that, and I picked this one on purpose because it was a little more, I think it was more contextual for the use in art, because some of them would say like, you know, blue, you know, it doesn't stimulate appetite. So then of course in food photography, you know, it's like, oh, I don't know. Like, and I think most of us is probably, if you've gotten into studying color, you've probably heard that at some point. However, you think about someone like Donna Hay, who her brand, you know, signature involves that really beautiful, calm blue. And it works amazingly with warm colors and browns and things like that. So I think that the reason I really liked this specific chart, and you can see safety, harmony, stability, reliability, balance, you know, relax, revitalize, you know, which are some of the words that I used when I described green. And I think that ultimately it's color, like you were saying, is that each person sees a particular color and experiences it differently. But generally speaking, I take such an emotional approach to my photography at this point in my career. And I've really started focusing on how do I want people to feel. And I think that when you study color from an emotional and psychological standpoint, it really will affect the choices that you make, because maybe this food should feel healthy. Maybe you want people to feel energized or relaxed or balanced when they're seeing. So I think that it can inform the types of decisions you make when you're using color. Like if you want someone to feel comforted. I use an example on a soup that I shot recently, and it had a lot of blue tones when I first shot it. And then I reshot it because I didn't feel like the images really reflected
Is it
It
this
was the
one?
Agvalemino, yeah, the soup here originally. So imagine that whole thing. It was like on a lighter blue backdrop, but it just didn't work. The soup didn't feel as warm and cozy. And when I approached this photo shoot and reshooting this classic Greek recipe for Agvalemino, this is like the chicken soup for the soul in Greece, like in the Greek culture. Like you're sick, you have a downtrodden heart or spirit, like this is what your mom makes for you, you know? And so I approached it from that place of like, how do I want people to feel when they look at this image, you know? And soup should feel comforting and warm and cozy and nourishing. So I didn't study the color chart, but I think over the time of my career, I've learned to understand what colors work with others, because meaning I didn't like look at the chart before I did this, but I have taken all of those things into my creative being in the past years through my work and also experience. I think playing with colors, seeing what works, seeing how certain colors feel has been really powerful way to tell the story in a deeper fashion. And I think that that's why I'm personally so excited that you're teaching about color, because I think color is going to be a whole new frontier. And you and I were talking about this the other day when we had our chat before this stream. I think that color and what people are doing with color right now, I'm so excited, because I think there's, you know, for so long we've been seeing things shot on like marble and wood and, you know, neutral backdrops, but like to be able to just literally turn that whole world upside down and shoot on like orange.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that may, like, you guys may hear that and be like, what? Like orange, but why I would never choose orange. And then I saw that image from Georgia McDermott from Georgia.
Let's go ahead and fire it up here.
And I think it's one of my favorite images that I've seen. I mean, so it's a pumpkin bread, but I was literally floored. I mean, obviously we have the harsh light, which is so striking and beautiful with the reflections of the glass, and is definitely having a moment in the photography world right now. But I mean, who would have thought, like, who would have picked, like, I would have never like shot a pumpkin bread. And it's, by the way, pumpkins, it's fall in Australia. Georgia's from Australia, hence the, you know, seasonal for her. But I mean, I was absolutely just, I don't know. I mean, obviously it's kind of a monochromatic feel, right? We have the orange and the pumpkins, the bread has orange tones, and then it's kind of a peachy orange backdrop. I love it. And I've never seen anything like it. And I love that she went there.
Yeah.
I love that she took that risk.
Well, and just too, I mean, one of the things that really strikes me also about this image is that from that background standpoint, one of the things that we talk about a lot is the idea of texture for food photography and texture and backgrounds, and that sometimes it can be really hard to evoke emotion out of more of a flat, like non-textured surface. But clearly that, like, that is not a problem here. Like I really like that that's a very untextured background, because I think then it really allows the texture of that bread to just jump off the screen. And
right. You're right.
That we dig into everything else and we're not being distracted by the background.
And she brought the texture with the plate. And I think, I mean, picture it without the glassware and those shadows and those reflections.
Yeah.
And we also, even though the pumpkins are just peeking into the frame, you really get to experience their texture too. Because I think the backdrop is so simple.
Yeah.
Like, I think the color is so bold.
Yeah.
If the backdrop had a lot of texture going on, it would have made the photo way too busy. And actually, I think it would have made the backdrop distracting.
Yeah.
It's already very bold. So I think I like that you honed in on that, because that's not something that I verbally, you know, I guess pointed out or identified, but you're exactly right that smoothness, it really makes the image.
Yeah, this is incredible. Well, and if we go back to those emotions connected to orange, the idea of optimistic, independent, adventurous, I mean, this definitely inspires in a different way than when we're typically looking at food photography.
Yeah, and I think if we think about, and you know, this is where, you know, my kind of process comes in. If you think about pumpkin frenzy in the fall in America. So the excitement of fall, you know, we've all just been through this hot summer we're done. We're just done with being hot and sweaty. And now the days are getting cooler. It's like pumpkin season is coming. And like, there's this collective frenzy that takes place. And I've never been to Australia in the fall, but I'm sure they have very hot summers. And so I think that it's kind of a really interesting play on the emotions of what fall does. I think most of us think of these subdued things and the fall leaves and whatnot, but this to me kind of speaks to some of those other emotions that orange was, that I guess orange expresses, of that excitement.
Yeah.
And
Oh, it's so true.
it catches your attention. And I feel like this is definitely celebrating, like, oh, it's fall, it's pumpkin season. Yeah.
I love it. Well, I'm really appreciative that you shared that image. So let's jump to another one that stopped you in your tracks. This beautiful green going on here. Tell us a little bit about what you just loved about this and why you had to share.
What's interesting about this image is I actually had the pleasure of meeting Rizal Kealoha at a event in San Francisco that both her and I were like a part of creating a recipe for. And that was the first time we met in person. We had been following each other. And she actually shared with me that a brand that wanted to work with her had basically told her, like, her feed was very light and bright. She shoots in harsh light. That's kind of her signature. And I love her work. I think it's very unique. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of light and bright photography nowadays. It's very popular, but the fact that she's chosen to do direct light and harsh light has been, I think, a very bold choice for her to kind of push her career in that direction and make her different from what's being done. But this brand gave her feedback like, you need to diversify, like everything's light and bright. And they wanted to see what she could do. And she got disheartened. And in person, she shared this with me, and I just encouraged her, like, what's holding you back from having color? Go for it. Like, you're extremely talented, and you need to just take this as constructive criticism and see where it leads you. So she had some custom colors made from a local backdrop maker in San Francisco. And she's Filipino. So this kind of banana leaf green is a color that she associates with her brand and just kind of identifies with. Mm-hmm. And when I saw this picture come up in my feed, I was just like, wow, like, just like what we were talking about with George's, I would have never saw that backdrop. It's beautiful, mind you, it's art. Like, it's a very gorgeous backdrop. It has texture, but it's soft and washed, and it's just absolutely stunning. And I know the maker of this backdrop, it's called Photo Surfaces. She's incredible, but I would have never picked a green backdrop in my life. And now not only watching Rizal make that decision, but seeing her soar, and even just the play of like the olive green with the darker bluish green, and then the purplish red in the artichokes, how that complements with the green. It's out of control. And it was bold, it was brave, and it's beautiful. And I literally just blew up her DMs like, oh my gosh, I was freaking out, because I think, it's exciting to see someone kind of pioneering something for themselves. And I think that this was one of the best steps she could have taken for her career, to really set herself apart and show, like, here's who I am, and this is me, and it's unique and individual. And I don't know what else to say. It's just,
I just totally, I wholeheartedly agree, because it is definitely a bold choice. And just, and how effectively too, the way that the light has been created in a way that we get those various then tones of green. So that, definitely that beautiful backdrop is a part of the composition and has its own personality and character, but that then we haven't lost the artichokes in the midst of that, the food is still the focal point. There's so much going right here, and that it feels unique. And I liked what you said too, and it comes to mind too as I look through different images that I come across here on YouTube and on Instagram, the idea of colors and cultural significance, and that depending on where we are in the world and what we grow up with, that different colors will speak to us in very unique ways, and that we can identify with those colors. From, as far as Greece, are there particular colors that ring true for you when you're in Greece?
Absolutely. Of course, the blue and white, but that latte marble, the one that I shot the agvolemano soup on, there's actually that color marble in this restaurant in our little village that it was like almost identical. And so I think there's a warmth in the Greek culture, and my style has been traditionally very cool. So, but I think that when we end up going back there, and our long-term goal is to be there permanently, I feel like my style is going to slowly transform based on just being influenced by the culture and by my surroundings. But I feel like there's a particular warmth and light that is associated with Greece. But then again, I think that the colors we choose and the tones and the type of light are very affected by the seasons. And a lot of people don't associate Greece. When people picture Greece, they think like warm, hot, sunny beaches, but Greece in the winter is not experienced by many people, and it's a completely different world. And so I'm excited we were there for 8 months, but it was like the warmer season for the most part. But I'm excited to see how the entire year and the fluctuations in the seasons and the weather, how it'll influence how I create long term. But you're 100% right. When you brought this up, I thought immediately about photographers I know from India, and there's just a warmth and vibrance to how they create. And I think it's so influenced by where they live, their culture. And I love that, because I think that each person's who they are as an individual is so informed and has been influenced by where they come from. And I think that that's what's really beautiful about what specifically Roselle is doing, is she already wants to be kind of a Filipino, representing Filipino culture and cuisine in a unique way as someone living in America now. But the fact that she's really thought about her brand and the colors and the influences of her culture and is bringing that all together, it's allowing this really beautiful person to come through her work, which, I think is ultimately what is going to set all of us apart, is when we really identify and discover who we are individually. And it'll allow us to, now if I see that backdrop, I'm going to know, oh, that's Roselle. From a mile away, I'll know, because I've just never seen anyone do something like that. So for all of you listening, be encouraged to play, to explore, and to not deny yourself that creative experience. Yeah. I think that a lot of the time we get in our heads and we're like, okay, well, when I posted on this color and did this, it was really popular and it got a lot of likes. And it's like, I think that there's definitely a place for understanding trends and understanding what works, understanding what's popular, for example. But for the creative experience and for discovering, allowing yourself to really discover those unexplored parts of who you are and your creativity, I think that these are great examples of how color can literally completely turn your photography upside down. Like I know right now, and I'm getting emotional almost thinking about it, but I know that for Roselle, like this is literally a major turning point in her career. And those photos may not have gotten as many likes as the others, but that we can't let that define our path. We have to really find a way to trust your personal instincts and to go there and to not be afraid.
Don't be afraid, guys. Don't be afraid. Bust out. Share who you are. I love it. It was a beautiful image. Well, let's go ahead and jump to another one, shall we?
Let's go.
Go ahead. And this was a submission from ta-da. Here we go. It's like Jerry and Dale. And let me pull up. I've got some descriptions too from them here. So in terms of, all right. So obviously in terms of the colors, we've obviously got some complementary colors going on, and you're able to see this image. Yeah, Bella?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, good. So obviously the red and the green with the neutral base is, he says, it's highlighting the freshness and to add some appeal to the image. And so, red and green, we have a lot of, at least in Western culture, definitely, I guess worldwide, but some associations with the red and the green, but this is not necessarily screaming Christmas to me.
Absolutely not. No. And I actually, if we think back on the color psychology, red is kind of a call to attention. Mm-hmm. And when you read his caption, farmers provide food on our table. Unfortunately, agriculture has been a dying profession in the country. It's like, he's calling, I mean, obvious, I don't know if this is even something that was, he actually considered, or if it was just kind of this subliminal thing, but just from the hands, almost like it's fresh harvested. I'm just thinking about how the colors actually played to the message of the photo. Like there's obviously a message tied to his image. And I think that the red definitely helps as kind of like a call to attention. And I like how it was all around the edges, like kind of bringing your focus into his hands holding the fruit, which I think is, he's kind of trying to say like, hey, there's people behind the food that we eat, right? Yeah, I love it. It's absolutely beautiful. Great choices.
It's that communication, and that's so true. Yeah, anytime we're, I mean, you think of like a stoplight or something else that kind of is like, hey, warning, FYI, because this is also, yeah, it's like that celebration of the food and the agriculture, but at the same time, like a warning to, if we continue on this path, what could happen. And so I think that's such a great point. And I love those flowers. I'm like, I wonder what those are.
I think they're bougainvillea. They're like a double or triple, like tufted bougainvillea.
I see, that is the most beautiful bougainvillea flowers I've ever seen. And I like to, just in terms of the green, I'd be curious to know from an editing perspective, how much was altered and changed in terms of the original. I know that for me, when I get into greens, there's definitely a lot of playing around because sometimes the way that the camera interprets the green and the way that I want to express the green can be a little different. I mean, for you, Bella, when you're editing with green, because obviously green, like we said,
right,
is an important part of your process. Do you alter greens much?
I think, like you just said, depending on the moment, and I think I shoot with natural light. So depending on the temperature of the light and the tone of the light that's coming into my scene, typically have to go cooler on the green, but very carefully, because if you go too toward like the bluish end of the green, it can start to look very unnatural. And I think that's, where you have to draw the line. It's like usually definitely like maybe 5, like on the scale in Lightroom. Yeah. But yeah, it's sometimes greens just register very yellow, and that's not necessarily how they looked in real life. So I think definitely towards the bluer end, which it does look like he did edit them a little bit there, but I think he did it very tastefully because it doesn't look unnatural. And I think that's the key. We always want to think about, unless you're trying to do something crazy, and artful and just unconventional. But I think he was, you still see the yellow and the different tones in the calamansi, I think is that little citrus that he's holding. So yeah, I think that's what I always try to keep in mind is like, I want to, because like you said earlier, we all see color a particular way, but to respect the color and keep it as natural as possible, I think is really important. I think he did a great job of keeping it green.
Yeah. And I think too, some of that attention to like how far you take a particular color comes with time and experience. And that's just something you have to work through. It's, I look back to old photos and go, oh gosh, how did I not see, like that I had taken that red too far towards the purples, or, that there's certain things that you have to, and that's what we've talked about all this month. And that's what the, Alber's book is all about, is the idea that you think color until you really start to explore color, and then you realize, oh my gosh, like, and it's just a continual exposure to color, digging deeper into it, further understanding it personally, that it's not even something you can sometimes put into words. It's sort of that that growth of your own personal intuition. We're all born with that personal sense of taste, and that's what got us into this in the first place. But the further that we explore and go further, the more we see it. Just like I was at church the other day, and we do rehearsal, and I show up, and usually we're at church in the morning, and so that's fine. But this was in the evening, and I'm like, what did you guys do with the lights in here? And I was like having this moment. Everybody's like, Joni, calm down. I was like, no, like literally they've installed new lights in here, or the colors are completely off. And everybody just thought I was totally crazy. But then I realized that because of the time of day, the sun was setting so that the light was coming through the stained glass in a way that doesn't happen in the morning. And so it creates this sense of blue in the room. And so had that happened 5 years ago, probably my eye wouldn't have been as in tune to it. But having been so exposed and conscientious and aware of the color of light and the color of things, that it was just like obvious to me and lost on everybody else.
Right. And I think that's so neat that though you touched in on it, because it was affecting you physically and emotionally. And I think that that's, I think that that's what makes color so powerful. And I think that, like you said, it does take experience to learn what works. But it's one of the most fascinating things to explore and to discover and define what colors speak to you and what colors speak to, the message of a particular photo or the message of your brand, for example. So,
and just cultivating that and understanding, like, what should my brand colors be? Well, you spend some time with some colors, get to know them.
And I think that exploring color is really important too. If you're just a photographer, like if you don't have a food blog or a social influence and like you're just a photographer, like I was hired to do photos for this like all natural dairy free ice cream company, like unrefined sugar. And they were called Green Girl Bake Shop. And they didn't have any professional photography and nothing about their brand. Like they didn't have branding, like they didn't have a look. And so part of the job wasn't just to take pictures for them, but as, the stylist and photographer, like I literally created like a look for them and a brand for them. And so the whole green is speaking to like natural, all organic, no weird ingredients, but there was no green in really any of their products. So we found like their shade of green, and I made a custom backdrop for them and literally like created a brand for them based on how green makes you feel, but also creating this aesthetic for that actually tied into their name. So I think that exploring color is great for even if you're just going to be a professional photographer and work with brands, because you may have an opportunity to have an influence on the look for a brand that is informed by your experience with color.
Oh my gosh. And I bet you had a blast.
It was so awesome. And she was literally, the gal who founded it is the one who hired me. She was literally crying when she saw the photos, because she was just like, this is going to change our business. Like we actually have a look and a style and a brand that makes sense for us. And I think that that's a really special skill to try to hone, so that you don't just think about, well, what's my style going to be? But, because if you have an open mind creatively to explore all different types of photography and all different types of color, I think you don't only discover who you are yourself creatively, but it gives you the abilities to express someone else's message, and as a professional photographer, like I saw you were doing a shoot for Tarani, those syrups in your kitchen. And I mean, just the whole, like, again, getting into the emotions and the psychology of color and light and all that. It's like unspoken, I could see like the entire vision for that campaign that you were shooting, the kind of light, bright, it's morning, we're in the kitchen, Tarani wants you to have the subliminal thing that you're going to grab one of their syrups to say, put in your morning coffee or whatever it may be. And I think that, that's why kind of understanding the emotions and the psychology of color are really, really helpful, because ultimately there's so much more than just the food. There's a unspoken story being told by the way we photograph. And I think that's why learning color, exploring it, understanding it from an emotional standpoint is so important, because it has a mega effect on how our images are going to feel and what they're going to say to people.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, let's see what these next ones are. Let's see what we've got saying going on here from Elspeth Evans. Elspeth has created a beautiful dish here. And she submitted, so we've got, of course, the caption there, but let me also look at what Elspeth included. So here's what was fun for this. So Elspeth, like a good number of you out there, I've heard, picked up some of the color swatches, like the sample cards, to kind of play around with colors independent of food, to really kind of dig into it. So what Elspeth was going for was some rich and warm colors in the food that would really reflect Moroccan cuisine. So when we talk about culturally, how food and colors are influenced by culture, And then she said, as the content of the plate was already colorful, she went for a neutral background. And this is a phone pic, which I love it. She said, life is just too busy, but it's okay. Whatever you got to do to get that creativity in. And that's what I absolutely applaud, because to try to, you know, I think that sometimes we get so hyped up in trying to make every image a masterpiece, and then we get like completely bogged down and overwhelmed, and then we just, you know, stop because you're like, well, it's not going to be perfect, what's the point of doing it, right? So I love stuff like this where you're just getting in and you're playing, you're experimenting, whether it's your phone, whether it's your, it doesn't matter. Like it's that pure expression and that pure taking the time to practice your craft. You know, it's not like you just roll out of bed and you're suddenly good at something. And so this is a beautiful job that you've done here, despite obviously what you said, Elspeth, you know, having some limitations and whatnot, but you've done a beautiful job. And I love just that combination of the green and the yellow and the orange and how they stand out independently from one another.
Yes.
Really, I enjoy that vibrancy and that sort of feeling of being very alive. I don't know, what your initial thoughts on this one, Bella?
Yeah, I think that the green, like, I mean, I'm picturing the image without the green, and I think it would have just been as beautiful. It would have been a little more monochromatic, but I think what the green, you know, it sends a message of kind of life and vibrance, and it just makes it feel really fresh. And I think it's the decision to be on a neutral backdrop because the plate was blue. I think the blue plate was a great decision to play off of the orange and the yellow. And then just reading her caption, you know, like how she wanted to create something to, you know, do the cheese, this beautiful homemade goat cheese justice. Like I love that it's a smartphone picture, because I actually, when I started my Instagram, I only did smartphone images for like the first year and a half. And we got to like, I don't know, 50,000 followers with smartphone pictures. And I think that, like you were just saying, it took so much out of the equation, like not having to pull up. And I was, you know, I mean, I had practiced before we started our blog. I think I had gotten a DSLR like maybe a year before. And I was really learning and practicing with my DSLR. But when we started the Instagram, I was like, I think it would be fun and a really great challenge just to have smartphone pictures on the Instagram. And I think because the way a smartphone sees is like limited in comparison to a DSLR, it was a really great challenge. And I think that, like you said, it's sometimes the creative process and doing something is more important than all of the technical things, because like my goal when I started my Instagram, I literally posted every day. I just took a picture a day, kind of like that 365 challenge, like, because I was so excited and I didn't want my abilities or inabilities to limit my creative expression and the effort that I put into things. So I love that it was shot on a smartphone and that she didn't let that get in the way of her still creating something. And I think that that's really important to remember, is that I think the process and actually doing it and applying yourself, and because you really learn by doing, first and foremost. We can do a live stream every day, but you know, I have a friend who he's been watching Peter McKinnon, you know, religiously pretty much since I introduced him to him. And yet he hasn't really been creating, you know, and I'm like, okay, you're watching Peter McKinnon, who's like putting out 3 videos a week. He's like, and that was a personal commitment he made for himself, that like, I'm gonna do this year. I'm gonna put this work in. Yet you're not applying anything, that you're not going out there and like, and I think sometimes we learn so much, we can kind of feel like trapped in the confines of like trying to, you know, have everything you said, like you said, be a masterpiece. But it's like, no, just get out and do it. Just get out and do it and create, because that's the only way you're really going, that's the only way you're really going to learn.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, let's jump to the next one. Thanks for sharing that, Elspeth. I love that. All right, next up from A Forager's Feast, we have got, let me get the little caption here that she submitted. Oh, I love this. So Bella can also probably relate. She said she watched the video on color theory 3 times just to understand what she did not learn in art school, evidently. Or maybe she just wasn't paying attention in college, which I'm guilty as charged, right? But she said she experimented with the Swiss chard on a lighter background and a darker background just to see which one brought out the vibrant color of the leaves and the stalks more, because I mean, obviously chard, like from a color perspective, is such a fun piece of produce to play with. And that she thought that the darker backdrop brought out the brightness of the reds and the greens specifically, just so that they really popped. So she had a lot of fun experimenting. And that's when, I mean, I know Bella loves to do this too. You styled a box full of beautiful produce from the farmer's market last week, which again, for those of you who aren't following Bella on Instagram, you definitely should. I especially love her stories. And like, you took us to the farmer's market last week and showed us step by step, you know, how you assembled this image of this box of produce that was beautiful. But it's, I mean, produce, that's one of our favorite things to go to, because you don't have to cook it. It's just ready to go.
Yes.
And you can experiment. So I don't know, what were your thoughts on this image, Bella?
I actually can't see the image. Like, I don't know. I see you. I see you.
My face. Oh, no, I'm sitting here waxing poetic about it. Here we go.
I saw it before. So yes, no.
Foragers.
No, I love this image. And I've actually, in my past, I think at a workshop, we shot some fresh picked Swiss chard from the garden. We had a very similar color backdrop, because it really, I think the darkness was a really good decision, like the actual depth of the backdrop to really make the vibrance and the way that the ribs of the chard catch the light, they really stand out. But I wholeheartedly believe in most of the beginning of my little Instagram journey, because I was working full time. So I didn't, even though I had started the food blog, I maybe put up a couple recipes a month. It was a lot more about the creative experience of taking photography and posting it to Instagram, at least initially. And playing with pretty produce is my number one tip to anyone who's learning food photography, because it's food. And like you just said, it's already beautiful, even if it's not perfect, you know. I think, meaning it's not the perfect apple or whatever. I think just getting elements, whether you go to the farmer's market or you grew it yourself or you found it at the grocery store, I think laying things down and playing with them it takes out all of the stress and the pressure of having to cook something and having to style it, especially when you're learning, because you have all the technical things you're trying to keep in mind. And, you know, I think that it just to choose a backdrop, lay things down, take some pictures, and then, hey, swap out backdrops, play with a different color, you know, change the direction of the light, you know, experiment with it coming maybe from the top and seeing what that does. And I think it's one of the best ways to kind of learn everything that you've been teaching, light, composition, color, without any of the stress of food styling or cooking or having food look sad because you're taking too long. I absolutely, and I think that I don't know, it really let the colors shine, the choices that she made. And it's a great celebration of just the beauty that already comes from nature. That, you know,
well, and too, looking at that darker background, I mean, certainly the dark really helps to elevate and, you know, project those colors and the light. But too, that there's some like kind of teal, bluish, greenish undertones that are in that background that I think then when we think back to the idea of, you know, the subtraction that green blue is being pulled out of, then the presence of the yellows and the reds that are in those stalks, just really helping to amplify kind of that more magenta pink that we get in those stalks. And then that yellow, because we've kind of really extracted the blue out of it, that complementary effect, it just really catapults it. And then too, the placement, I have to think you were probably thinking through, you know, how to sequentially place the pinks and the yellows in a way that it felt naturally integrated, but at the same time, like as if we haphazardly just dropped this on a surface.
Exactly. And I think that that's another thing, like it feels organic. Like even if she did, you know, kind of pull up a yellow to have the pinks and the yellow balanced, it feels organic and it doesn't feel forced or overthought. And I think that that's really important because it lets the produce just do its thing. But I was going to say something about the bluish tones in the backdrop. I think that was a really good editing choice, because if we picture like desaturating the blues and the teals out of that and it being gray, like it would not have felt the same at all. Like if you can picture that as like dark gray, it just wouldn't work as well, in my opinion. I think that the blue tones are really important for the color story here.
Well, I'm glad it looks like you had a good time playing around with some produce. So let's go ahead and jump into the last one that I've got here from the selections from Carrie, a beautiful ingredient. And let's see what Carrie said in the submission of this one. She was really focusing in on using color to tell the story, the idea of how a symphony combines notes and musical layers, which is what we talked about in last week's video. And so this is a play on tiramisu. And she wanted to express light and rich at the same time, and really using the Neapolitan colors, which I think is really unique and fun. So she chose to highlight analogous colors with the light pink and the light gold, and then playing off the dark chocolate and the white whipped cream. So she said her eyes did play tricks on her with the level of pink in the gray, so she had to keep stepping away, which again was something we talked about 2 weeks ago, how we really have to, in our editing process, step away from the computer, give our eyes a chance to kind of recalibrate, because we can get so immersed in the colors that we can lose our way, especially with, I know for me, reds and greens can really play with my eyeballs. And so so clearly some major intention going on here with these beautiful tiramisu cups. So thoughts, Bella, what strikes you with the colors in this image?
Yeah, I think that the actual tone and the shade of that kind of like, I don't know, the pink, the way that she balanced that with the color of like the actual little cake on top of the tiramisu, like they're very complementary to each other. I mean, I'm just picturing all of the different versions of like pink. And I think that however, I don't know what the actual color of the linen is, like how much she had to play with it. But I also think that the coolness in the marble, that it kind of has a bluish tone. So it also really works with the kind of warm, peachy pink almost. And I can imagine how it was difficult, because sometimes I know from shooting on, I have a similar backdrop. A lot of like pinks and purples will actually show up in that grayish marble. So yeah, I like that, she made that bold choice to use that linen, because I could have pictured just the tiramisu cups on the backdrop, and it would have been a great picture. But I think that the linen, I mean, if you look at it, it dominates the photo, but the way that she balanced the colors, it works. It really works together.
That's a good point though, because yeah, sometimes we can get it's hard when it comes to linens, and we see like I know this happens to me all the time. I'll see a beautiful linen and be like, oh, I need to have that, and that's gonna be great. And then I pull it into the frame and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's such a dominant color. And so how to really artfully balance that, it can be very tricky.
Yes. And I think the placement of the linen doesn't, I don't know how long she spent trying to make it look that way. It doesn't look like she forced it. Sometimes linens, as we all probably know, if you've ever tried to style a linen, they can be the hardest thing to style in the image. And you want them to feel natural and not like, like this feels like, it doesn't feel like a forced moment. So I don't know how hard it was for you to get to this point, but it doesn't, I think for the viewer to see like a perfectly curled and manipulated linen, sometimes it takes away from the food. And this just feels kind of like it wasn't ironed. It was just, it looks like she's getting ready, like she is getting ready to serve them. And it doesn't feel forced, which I like that about it. It feels more organic and natural, because linens can be tricky. They can be very tricky.
I know everybody's saying, you should make a video on linens. I was like, once I master linens, then I'll get back to you. But I'm not personally at that place. I still lose hours of my life
to linens.
Play the right way, you darn thing. So, but for those of you who do want a good linens video that I think can strike a lot of inspiration, Rachel from Two Love Studio on her YouTube channel, she has, I think it's like 5 or 6 different quick ways to style linens that I personally have used and appreciated. So you can definitely check that out too. I'll be sure to link that after we wrap up the live here. But those are all of the images. We had a ton of submissions. Again, sorry we can't go through all of them, but thank you to everybody who submitted. I know it's a little, it's kind of a lot to put yourself out there. You got to step out in faith, but definitely some really amazing images. And thank you to Bella for pulling in those other images from your folks as well. And so with that, I just want to give you guys, we're going to hop into a little Q&A here in a second. But I want to make sure just to remind you too, you can find Bella and all the information about, of course, following her and getting into her work and her journey, all linked below. And then also checking out those workshops. For any of you who weren't on the beginning of the call, we talked all about her workshops. You can definitely watch the replay of this after we're done and understand her story and her background and where she comes from. But definitely these workshop opportunities, which are also mentorship opportunities, which to me, it's like, oh my gosh, incredible photographer is offering a mentorship opportunity. That's to me like it's worth its weight in gold. So with that, let's go ahead and hop into some Q&A. I see we've got lots of comments going on, lots of people chit-chatting. Hopefully you guys have been having fun talking with each other, but let's jump in, see if we've got any questions. All right. Oh, beautiful ingredients. She was here. So yay. She crumpled it and tried to make it not look forced. She said it took a minute. Yeah. Only 1 minute or multiple minutes? I love it.
They're saying it's not bougainvillea, it was a hibiscus. Okay, I've never seen that hibiscus.
Oh, the one that we thought was the bougainvillea.
It was beautiful.
Yeah, I love it. All right. And Noah, I totally agree. He says posting good content is better than not posting perfect content. Just got to put yourself out there. Absolutely. Because like, what's the worst that could happen, right? I mean, somebody doesn't like your photo.
Right. You just got to keep rolling, you know? And I think that that's why it's so important for at the end of the day, for it to be about you, your creative experience. Like, yeah, you can't, if you bring everyone else's opinion into the equation, it's going to paralyze you. Just keep on trucking. Don't let it, just create out of your passion.
Absolutely. And Erica asked if we can link the Instagram accounts so that you can see them. Sorry, I should have. I will definitely on next time, I'll make sure to post the specific Instagrams that we're talking about. But I'll definitely post them as well after this live stream. So good thing to note for next time so you can really see those images.
So here's a question. Someone said, Bella, do you batch produce your IG images on one day or is it done over several days? Thanks for sharing your process. It just kind of depends. I mean, if I'm shooting a recipe that's going to go on my blog, then I'll really milk that shoot. So for the agvalemino, that soup recipe, I took a picture of just the lemons. I took a picture of the broken eggshells. I styled the ingredients. I set up a tripod and took a picture of myself cracking pepper over the soup. So if I'm going to go through all the effort of, say, producing a recipe, I'm going to really milk that shoot and get as much content as possible that I can now share over the course of the next month, as long as it's still winter and soup is relevant. Mm-hmm. So it just really depends. But like yesterday, I had some bananas that, you know, were perfect ripeness for banana bread. And I was like, I want to do something different. There's so many banana breads in the world. And I kind of did some recipe development research and got an idea. And it wasn't perfect. Like the cake needs some tweaking, but I still decided to style and shoot it and play with composition and learn about how the topping of the cake was going to interact with light, what direction, you know, which direction should the light have been coming with. And I posted the picture to my Instagram. And I literally shot it like, I don't know, I think I shot it the same day and shared it the next morning. Yeah. And it was just for creativity's sake, and my feed needed something kind of neutral and monochromatic, if I'm completely honest. But, you know, and recipe development's part of what I do. And I talked a little bit about that in my caption because I didn't have a recipe to give people. Mm-hmm. And I just talked about kind of slowing down and appreciating the process. And even when something doesn't turn out perfect, you know, and not letting that discourage me and be like, okay, you know, let's just still get in the studio and play. Right. And, so it really just depends, I think, on where I'm at. Sometimes I have a lot of content to work with based on how I've been creating in the kitchen, but other times, you know, running a business like this, it's not all I do. I don't just get to sit around and take photos every day. Sometimes I'm on the computer for hours responding to emails and doing accounting and contracts and planning my upcoming workshops. There's, you know, it's like an event planning. I mean, 5 weeks of workshops is a lot of work. So I would love if I could just shoot every day, but that's not the case. So I think do as much as you can when you can. But if I also try to work from a place of inspiration, and sometimes I'm just not, I don't know, if I'm not feeling it, it happens to all of us. That's when I'll usually like, I need to go to the farmer's market and just get some produce and just play and let it speak to me, because you can't always expect yourself to be able to create and pull things, off the top of your head. And sometimes you need a creative break. So it kind of ebbs and flows. I wouldn't say like I'm always super prepared. It's an organic experience. I try to just be authentic to whatever I'm feeling. So.
I love it. Let's see. We've got a bunch of questions coming in here now. So yeah, Heather just asked, where do you look for inspiration? So it sounds like the farmer's market's a great place, certainly.
Yes. Also, you and I, Joni, were talking about this, that places like Pinterest, not just looking at food, creating boards for flowers or home design, interior design. I saw a picture of a cactus against there's some light coming in my room right now.
It's beautiful. It's illuminating the
sun. It was like a cactus, a beautiful bluish green cactus against like a pinkish adobe clay wall. And I remember just loving that color combination. And it ended up in the future informing a photo shoot I did in Greece on a pink backdrop with like nopales, like the cactus petals and the cactus fruits. And it was completely informed by something that it became a food photo because the things I took pictures of are edible, but that was something that didn't have anything to do with food photography per se. But I'm definitely inspired by other people's work. And I think another great way to get inspiration when you don't know what to do, if we're speaking food, is if there's a particular ingredient you want to work with, like, oh, strawberries just came into season. Sometimes just, searching for strawberry recipes or looking at Google image searches and just kind of seeing if you can stoke that creativity, or just take a day off. Maybe your mind is just, like, I don't know. I think you have to just listen. But there's times where I don't know what to do. And I'm just like, this is a cue that I need to take a day off because the juices aren't flowing, and maybe stepping away from it all will help the juices come back.
Absolutely. Got to have that creative room to explore. Let's see. Okay. Noah's got a great question. Looks like the majority of photos shared were flat lays, which, if we go back through it. So what percentage of the work that we each produce are flat lays versus head-on angled? How do you decide which perspective to shoot? So, I'll start with that. I find personally that flat lays for me are easier. And I've heard other photographers say that as well, but I think we all kind of gravitate in our own particular way, just depending on the way our eyes see. But for me, it's really about taking time to understand the food. But even like, for example, the image that I shared on my Instagram this morning is a flat lay, but I have that same exact dish shot at a 3/4 angle because you don't get the same experience of the food. It's a layered dessert. And so in order to really experience the layers, you need that head on or 3/4 angle. And so I did shoot that particular dish. And just like when we're shooting for a client, generally, if it's a given recipe or dish, having both the overhead as well as the head on. And again, but like a sandwich, I'll take that back. Dennis the Prescott can do an overhead sandwich like a boss, but for most of us, a sandwich is really great approach, maybe from a head-on perspective. And so it's really specific to the food and what's the most appealing angle is my perspective on it. How about you, Bella?
Yeah, I think that I agree with you. I think we're very similar in that like flat lays, overhead shots are kind of a go-to. They actually translate really well on Instagram as well. And I think that sometimes that influences decisions, but at the same token, I think it really depends on the food and also just your own personal creative expression. Some foods don't look as good as an overhead shot. And so coming straight on or at an angle actually interprets the full message of whatever it is that you're shooting much better. So I think it just really depends. But generally speaking, I think that my go-to is an overhead shot. It's just kind of what naturally comes out of me. And sometimes I have to remind myself to like step back and explore other angles. Like I took a 45, like kind of angled shot with backlight of the cake I posted yesterday. And it's like, I love it, but will I post it to Instagram? I don't know. I don't know if I think it just depends on what you feel and what you want to share and express through the image. But I think drinks, for the most part, I think overheads can be really cool, but generally speaking, you know, a straight on is the way to show off a drink. So I think it depends on what you're shooting most of all.
Yeah, no, it's a, yeah, totally. All right. Oh, we'll take 2 more questions. So Sammy's got a great one here. Is it best to use complementary colors or can you mix it up a bit? What do you think, Bella? Complementary colors all the way?
I think I need to lower this curtain really quick. I'm like,
yeah, no, if you
hold on one second.
We've got very dramatic lighting.
Hold on one second. All right, there we go.
You know what that reminded me of? It was like a Bohemian Rhapsody moment, like in a little face.
Okay, that's much better. I think, I don't know. It's like, look at that picture from George Eats and from Rizal Kealoha. They were like different tones of the same color. I think just like when we teach composition, you know, it's like there's rules, quote unquote, but they're really not rules. They're just guidelines. They're just ideas.
Right.
I don't really want, the way that I teach my students and the way that I believe is that just be empowered by those things and let them inform your decisions, but don't ever put yourself in a box of like, this is what I have to do because these are complementary. And, you know, don't ever put yourself in a box creatively, because look at what can happen. You can create something that's just so unique and so different and never been seen before, because you just played with something, like you got this idea, you saw something that we're like, oh gosh, I think I'm going to try this. And like, I would love to hear what sparked in like George's mind when like where did you come up with this? Like maybe she saw something that was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to shoot my pumpkin bread on an orange backdrop. Like, where did that come from? Right. And I think true genius and true like inspiration doesn't come from having yourself restricted or confined. It comes from, you know, like, look at people who innovate and create things. Like most people would be like, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You can't create an electric car that'll go more than 3 miles, you know, like, so it's the people that truly innovate and do something that's different, literally don't allow the rules to confine them.
Yeah. Yeah, no. And I say a great, like yesterday was a major source of inspiration for me. It was actually this picture right here. You can see the full one over on my Instagram. But it's kind of like a water lilies, kind of Monet-esque kind of thing going on. But I really like the combination of like the mint green with the reds, that kind of more rich purpley red, and then the purple undertones. And I really like, as I kind of explored 3 weeks ago in a video, I don't really use a lot of purple. And I was like, I need to just incorporate more of it. And so I made a lavender colored backdrop yesterday, which was very different for me. And it's actually hard to find a matte lavender that I really liked. So I was like, you know, having to mix colors, and I was like, oh boy, here we go. But ultimately created a combination it's like a, you know, very vibrant red with more of a mint green, and then this purple, which is lavender, which you kind of think, okay, that's not complementary necessarily other than the red and the green, but just you know, it's very unique, I felt, and very different, and pushed me creatively and got me outside of my comfort zone. I'm like, oh, do I like this? Do I not like this? But regardless, it was just a fun exploration. And so I think that's another, like you said, Bella, you know, get outside of just the Pinterest and the Instagram and go look and see what other things can inform it. And I think that, you know, looking at art and going to a museum, looking through art history books, you know, there's been plenty of artists who have gone well before us and have created beautiful palettes before. So how can you use like the Mona Lisa to inspire your color palette for your next soup dish, right? Like, I mean, it sounds a little crazy, but you really, if you take the time to study those colors, you can really get away from just worrying about, okay, is this the right shade of red and green to go together, as opposed to really feeling it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Stephanie Bishop wants to know, Bella, you said you use natural light. Do you use a tripod, handhold the camera? And also, what do you do on a dark gray day you have to shoot?
By far and large, I like to hold my camera.
Yeah.
I have a Nikon D750, so it has an articulating screen. It's a full frame camera. And the reason specifically I went with Nikon is because it has this screen. And so I have like lower back issues. And if I'm doing a shoot, like a flat lay, like I can see what's happening. I don't have to be like hunched over trying to look through my viewfinder. So I just like the free flowing, like I can move all around. And so I do by far and large shoot freehand, but especially on a dark and gray day. And for any action shots, I 100% use my tripod because you're going to have to lower your shutter speed to keep your ISO low. on a dark and gray day, you're going to have to lower your shutter speed so much that you can't be handheld. So it really just depends on the conditions. And of course, if I'm trying to get a shot of myself doing something, and if it involves two hands, I usually recruit my hubby, and I'll have the camera set up on the tripod. I'll have everything framed, and then I give him like a remote switch so he doesn't have to, be right on top of the camera, and he can kind of sit back and look at the screen. And I'm like, okay, I want my hands like this, because you can't at that point, unless I got a large monitor to watch myself, I like the interaction of having him help me, because he's seeing it now as my viewers are going to see it. And so yeah, it just really depends on what I'm doing, but it's kind of a mix of everything.
Yeah. Well, and for anybody who has not explored Bella's highlights, there's one in particular that I send a lot of people to when I get questions about how to shoot action, because you've got this one where you've got a cheesecloth, and I forget exactly what
I'm squeezing like homemade soy milk.
That's what it is. And so she's got a highlight. It's kind of further in the highlights, but I send people to it all the time because it kind of walks you through like how to set up the camera, how to position it, and then also tells the story of the idea that one of those action shots where you're getting that pour and you get the milk kind of coming down, that, it's not just a one shot and happens. Like I think you said it was something like 100 some odd shots until you found the
175 or something. Yeah. I had to like keep like putting the nut milk bag like back in the liquid to like reabsorb. And then, okay, are you ready? Are you ready? And then, we have it on continuous shoot. He's just like, while it's all the milk's falling out. But it's such a great challenge to get behind the camera and to capture that action. And it would be great if, you could have another person there. Like I have my husband to help guide me, but when you're by yourself, now you're getting into self timers and it's even harder. But yeah, it's such a great challenge. And I love the story that it tells to get your hands in the frame and do stuff like that. But that's a perfect example of needing a tripod because, especially like I do a lot of stop motion videos. And so if I wanted to turn that into a stop motion, the camera is steady and stable and every frame that it's taking can now be sewed together into a really cool artistic stop motion video.
Yeah.
I wanted. Yeah.
A whole other avenue of fun. I love it. All right. One last one, because it's a great question. Oh, and Dale Gray is here. Hi, Dale.
Hi, Dale.
So Fab Food for All. If you do flat lays, do you use auto or manual focus?
Always auto. Always for me. I almost never use manual focus. Honestly, I think that autofocus is so powerful. I don't know. What's your take on it?
So my take is autofocus if I'm handheld, and I'll do manual focus if I'm on a tripod or C-stand.
Right.
Because you can dial it in, but exactly, like the autofocus is such a great tool as long as you know how to use your autofocus.
Right.
So for those of you who don't, I've got a video on it.
Got you covered.
Yeah, exactly. Got you covered. So I'll be sure to link that as well. But yeah, definitely if I'm handheld, there's no way on God's green earth I can dial in manual focus.
No. Yeah.
I'm not
hard. You're moving around. It's just, it's not a good idea.
Yeah. I love it. Well, so many questions, certainly. But here's the thing. Bella and I we live online. We have all sorts of ways to get a hold of us. So certainly be sure to check out Bella's website. I've got all her information linked down below. You can go find her on Instagram, follow her adventures. Like I said, check out her highlights. There's some major education there as well. And I can't wait to hear about how the workshops go, Bella. It's going to be
Thank you so much for having me. This was such an honor and such a pleasure.
Gosh. And we went for like an hour and a half. So thank you for those of you who stuck with us for an hour and a half. Oh my, officially the longest live. Like we're still here. We did it. So
I'm known for going overtime. What can I say?
It's all good. And yeah, and definitely we'll keep an eye on Bella as well, because I know you recently had some webinars and some other really cool education opportunities. So
yes, I created, actually after my webinar, I'm creating like a creative community email list. So I'm going to be opening that up for people to sign up, and I'll be sending out like creative content once a month to have kind of a place to share that type of content for the first time. I haven't really done anything like that before, so I'm excited.
Perfect. I love it. There's so much information out there. I tell you, the internet is an amazing place. So, well, thank you so much, Bella. And thank you to all of you who joined us here today.
Yes.
Sorry for those who
Thank you guys.
questions, but certainly take care of yourselves, and we will see you next week. We're going to be talking about
There's my hubby.
What's up, hubby?
Joni, can I say something for 30 seconds?
Please, you've got all the time in the world.
Not only do I got mad respect for you because you're like the badass, but here's the deal. You guys were talking about this psychology of color. And one thing my wife had said earlier that I wanted to highlight that you guys didn't touch on as far as the business aspect of it is it's not only just the creative side of it, but a lot of people want to take this creativity and make it their career. Well, the way you're going to stop a brand in their tracks is because of what they see, not because you're a one-trick pony and you look like everybody else, but all of a sudden, she was talking about Rizal doing this, taking this risk and making this bold move and doing that green backdrop and the artichokes and all that. And my wife, he touched on the fact that, yeah, that photo didn't get as many likes as her other photos because the people on her Instagram community are not used to seeing that from her. But the likes that those people click do not pay her bills. The brands that come across that photo and are stopped dead in their tracks and say, whoa, what is this? And then they see it continuously, some form of that type of boldness, that type of color creativity. As they start to see this as a continuum theme through her feed, all of a sudden that brand realizes this lady can do this. We want her to do our branding. And they reach out to her, and all of a sudden Rizal is creating branding for a company that would have never had that look before ever. And so by far and large, the vast majority of the work we do through Fulfilled is not sponsored post. It is by brands seeing this boldness, this will. There's photos that we may only get 2,000 to 3,000 likes on. That is what caught a brand's attention that got us a huge contract.
Right.
There's photos that got 10 or 12,000 likes that, great. Thank you for the 10 or 12,000 likes, but that didn't pay a single bill.
Yeah.
So
not money in the bank, my friend. It's not money in the bank.
It's not. So the psychology of color directly also relates to the business aspect, and don't be afraid to take these risks and be bold because a brand will notice it, and now you'll have a career.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think that's so important.
I love you, Joni.
Virtual high five, my friend.
My hubby has ever shown his face. So we call him Incognito for short because he's just. Yeah, I think it's so important to remember.
I felt very compelled because I was like, man, if you guys are going to do the psychology of color thing, let's get the people who are watching this who want to make it a business understand.
Yeah.
As in, don't just look for, oh, okay, when I posted this, I got really high likes. That's good and all, but did that put money in your bank account?
Right.
Did that pay any bills? So focus on the big picture, on the long game. I need to do something that is going to make a brand be like, whoa. I got to hire this lady.
Right. And I think that was one of the questions. I know we weren't supposed to take any more questions.
But
someone asked up here something about getting work. Where is it? I'm trying to see where it was. I can't see it now. But yeah, someone was saying something about brands versus there's so many comments. You guys are amazing. But yeah, so I think that that's really important to remember. And I think in our day and age, we're so stimulated by that engagement, by those likes. And like I had a post get almost 12,000 likes. Like that doesn't happen every day. That's exciting. But if I let that dictate how I create, like I would be my creativity would be very monotonous, I feel, and very just playing to what's going to trend, playing to performance. And I think now if you're so focused on that, when you have a photo that doesn't do well, whether or not it deserves to do better is up to you know, Instagram and social media are fickle things. So I think that now it can really just have way too large of an effect on your emotions, because now you're like, oh my gosh, this photo's not doing well and what's wrong. And now it's like, you just have, that's why I said several times throughout our time together, you always have to, I think, first and foremost, create from that place of authenticity of who you are and what's inspiring you. That should be the very first thing. Like, I was talking to someone, I was like, I don't create for anyone else. Like, this isn't about what I think other people want to see. This is about what feels true and honest and authentic to whoever I am in the moment as an artist. So I think from that perspective, what my hubby shared, you know, that's what's going to make you individual too, and have your career stand the test of time, because you're going to be unique. So yeah, awesome. Well, this was so great. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, thank you. This was such a treat. And I'm so glad that everybody so much activity going on in the comment section today too. So certainly if there was some sort of burning question there, feel free. I will go through if I can. I don't know if YouTube lets me go through the comments afterward and answer anything we missed, but certainly too, you can always reach out to the both of us. So thank you again, Bella.
Thank you. This was awesome. Thank you everyone for tuning in.
See you guys later.
All right. Take care.